Namo Namaha Shishyas Suswagatam. Let's have a little chat. Sanskrit is like building a house. Every layer of the house needs to be built properly so that the next layer does not fall down. Otherwise, if lesson 1 or lesson 2 or lesson 3 hasn't been properly ascertained, then as we move on to lesson 4 in this session, then eventually, or sometime in the future, the house, your Sanskrit, will fall. So this means we need to be practicing the work as prescribed, because the pace will slowly start to pick up and there will be more work expected of us. Furthermore, we need to know what is first person, second person, and third person. We also need to know what is single, dual, and plural. So when we say first person dual, what comes to mind? Gachavaha. Third person plural. Gachanti. Plural, first person. Gachamaha, etc. So you need to know this anytime, any place, anywhere. It is vital that the paradigm is memorized. We also need to know which consonants from the table are voiced and unvoiced. And how do you tell which one is voiced? What does voiced mean? Vibrating in the throat. How do you tell which one is aspirated? Puff of air. Now let's do the verses together for revision. Abhyaso, please. Abhyaso nahi tyaktavyo. Abhyaso hi param balam. Anabhyase visham vidya. Ajirne bhojanam visham. Good. Next one. Hastasya bhushanam danam. Satyam kanthasya bhushanam. Shrotrasya bhushanam shastram. Bhushanaih kim prayojanam. Good. Next one. Atra tatra cha sarvatra. Vartate parameshwaraha. Anyatra chapi tatsthanam. Kutrasyat yatra nasti saha. Okay, now let's move on to the next verse, which will be called like blades of grass. All right, so we're moving on with the verses. Hopefully you have remembered at least 1 or 2 of the previous 3 verses. This is the 4th verse. Repeat after me. Udarasya. Udarasya. Remember the long A. The D is a dental. Udarasya. Trnam. That's a retroflex. As you can see, the R and the N has a dot underneath. Trnam. So this means the tongue is on top of the mouth. Trnam vittam. Vittam. Trnam vittam. Dental, remember? Tongue consciousness. Vittam. Shurasya maranam. Shurasya maranam. Again, the N has a dot underneath. Repeat. Shurasya maranam trnam. Viraktasya. Viraktasya. Viraktasya trnam bharya. Notice the long A's. Viraktasya trnam bharya. Nihsprahasya. Now the little H, this is called what? When there's a dot underneath the H, or a diacritic. That's called a visarga. It's supposed to be nihi, because remember how the visarga echoes the preceding vowel? So it's not like we say nihi, but in this case, because it's in the middle of the word, then it's simply as a puff of air. So nihsprahasya. Nihsprahasya. Trnam jagat. Nihsprahasya trinam jagat. Udarasya trinam vittam. Udarasya trinam vittam. Shurasya maranam trinam. Shurasya maranam trinam. Viraktasya trinam bharya. Viraktasya trinam bharya. Niksprahasya trinam jagat. Okay, I'll do the whole thing. Udarasya trinam vittam. Shurasya maranam trinam. Viraktasya trinam bharya. Niksprahasya trinam jagat. So udarasya, that means when there's a sya, this means the genitive, this means of. Now when you say, for example, the boys with an apostrophe s, that's a genitive. It's an ownership. So udaraha would be generous, but then udarasya would be of a generous. In other words, something that belongs to a generous person. So wealth or power is like a blade of grass, like an ordinary piece of grass, to one who is generous. So a literal translation would be wealth, power of a generous person is like a blade of grass. Now you're going to say, where is the word is like? It's not there. So this is inferred. In other words, this is how Sanskrit works. You need to fill in the gaps in order to make sense of it. So, which we will slowly start to understand. So now think, well, how am I supposed to do this? It will become very clear as we go through the lessons. Shurasya maranam trinam. In other words, maranam, dying or death of a hero, again sya, of a hero is like a blade of grass. In other words, it matters not to a hero whether they die. It matters not to a generous person wealth or power of another person or just in general. Viraktasya, so viraktasya is one who is indifferent. In other words, they are not attached, they're not grabbing onto something. So to that one, bharya, wife, is like a blade of grass. I can hear the wives now questioning the statement, right? Okay, so there's two ways to interpret this. If you look at bharya, what does wife represent? You have to think like this in order to provide commentaries, bhashya, onto what these statements are saying. So what does wife represent? It represents not only joy, but also sorrow, because you can't say one without including the other. So the philosophical meaning is the joy or sorrow is like blade of grass to a one who is indifferent to the world, to a detached, a non-attached person, to a wise person. And the second meaning is that which is cherished to a wise husband is like a blade of grass, because the wise person understands there is more to life than the joys and sorrows that the person undergoes. And then nihsprahasya trinam jagat. In other words, the jagat, the world, literally, is like a blade of grass to nihsprahaha, the one who doesn't long for things in this world, the one who has conquered his desires. So to that one, the world is like a blade of grass. Okay, let's continue building our Sanskrit vocabulary. All right. How do you say here? Atra. There. Tatra. Where? You know. Kutra. Is asti. We already know this. Is not, na asti, or put it together, nasti. Kushalam nasti. That means health is not. Kushalam asti. Bhavataha kushalam asti wa. Mama kushalam. My wellness asti is. My wellness exists. Mama, this is a genitive. This means it is of me. It belongs to me. That means my or mine. Bhavatyaha, in other words, of a madam. Same thing with bhavataha, of sir. In other words, is bhavataha kushalam. In other words, is there wellness of sir? Okay, mam prichatu. I hope we can see this. Mam prichatu, ask me. Tam prichatu, ask her. And tam prichatu, ask him. So tam, man, tam, her. Okay, so again, repeat. Both Sanskrit and English. Atra, here. Here, atra. Tatra, there. There, tatra. Kutra, where. Where, kutra. Asti, is. Is asti. Remember the tongue consciousness with the t. Nasti, is not. Is not nasti. Mama, mine. Bhavatyaha, madams, with an apostrophe s. Bhavataha, sirs. Sirs, bhavataha. Madams, bhavatyaha. Mam prichatu, ask me. Ask me, mam prichatu. Tam prichatu, ask her. Ask her, tam prichatu. Tam prichatu, ask him. Ask him, tam prichatu. These will be good statements in class, in physical class. When we meet, then we can say, ask me, mam prichatu. And then say, tam prichatu, ask her. Next, we will go through revision of exercises in chapter 3. Vadataha smarataha cha. Vadataha, what is that? Dual? First person, second person, or third person? Second person. So you two say smarataha cha, and those two ask. And not gachanti. Gachanti, they all go. They don't all go. Not gachanti. Tishtamaha gachamaha cha. Tishtamaha, remember the retroflex? Tish, it's not tish, tish, it's tish. That's a tip of the tongue, roof of the mouth. Tishtamaha. And also notice the aspiration. It's not tishtamaha, tishtamaha. So there's a puff of air. Gachamaha. And we all go. Okay, let's go on to English. We do not speak. Okay, ignore the don't. We speak. Amaha. Okay, we don't speak. Okay, what is we speak? Vadamaha. Not vadamaha. We don't speak. Where are we standing? Okay, we stand. Tishtamaha. Kutra tishtamaha. Okay, I. Where do those two live? Where? Kutra? Those two. Those two. Not you two. So it's not taha. Those two. So it's taha. No aspiration. So what's live? Wasa. So wasati. That means he lives. Where do those two live? Kutra wasataha. Okay. We are not going. We go. Gachamaha. We are not going. Not gachamaha. I ask and they remember. I ask. Prichami. And they remember. That means all of them. And all they. What is remember? Smara. Smarati. He remembers. What is They all remember smaranti. So I ask, precami smaranti cha. Where are we? Kutra are we? Bhavamaha. Kutra bhavamaha. Where are we? Okay. We also need to know this table. Once again, extremely important. You should be able to say anywhere, gacchami, gacchasi, gacchati. And then dual, gacchavaha, gacchataha, gacchataha. And then plural, gacchamaha, gacchata, gachanti. Okay, this needs to be perfect recall. Now we will go through chapter 4. So, first thing, get the book please and open up to chapter 4. Let's go through it together so that we can learn about nouns. This will introduce a different aspect or open up a new door to our Sanskrit career. How to create nouns. Point 1. I'm not going to read it, but I'm going to simplify it for us. You can read it at your own time after first understanding per my explanation. So it's saying to create a noun, it is created in the same way as a verb. In other words, you start out with a root, and then we have a stem. So out of the root, we create a stem. And onto the stem, we then add an ending. This ending is called a declension. How many declensions are there? 8. What does this mean? It means depending on the context of the noun, that is what the declension will be. For example, if you have, quote, for the man, that is one type of declension. Of the man, another type of declension. On the man, another type of declension. When you have all 8 declensions for one single noun, that is called a paradigm. Number 2, there are 2 cases that we will start out with. The first is nominative. Repeat, nominative. What does this mean? The subject of the sentence. In other words, without the subject, does the sentence make sense? No. You need someone to be the main character in the sentence for the sentence to have any sense at all. It also says it is the doer of the verb. So, when I say nominative, what comes to mind is subject. The doer of the action. Who's going? The horse is going. So the horse is nominative because he is the one who is doing the horse is doing the running. The man is doing the talking. The woman is doing the cooking. So in all cases, the horse, the man, and the woman are nominative. Why? Because they are the doers of that which they are doing. Someone else is not doing it, they're doing it. And because they're doing the verb, they are therefore nominative, which means the subject of the sentence. It also says when you compare 2 things, for example, the horse is tired. Because you're defining the horse, both the horse and the tiredness, the tired is also nominative. The wall is white. The wall is nominative and white is also nominative. Why is it nominative? Because I am defining the wall. The second case is accusative. The accusative is the object of the verb. Something is being done onto it. The man goes to the horse. Who's the main subject? The man. Because the man is what? Doing the going. And where is the man going? To the horse. So the horse has to be accusative. So again, what is accusative? That which is being done onto. That means the verb is being done onto the accusative. Or motion towards. I go towards you. In other words, I am the nominative, going is the verb, and you are the accusative. The bird is singing a song. The bird is nominative because it is doing the verb. The singing is done by the bird. And what is the accusative? What is the motion towards? What is being done onto? Song. Okay. The stem for a man is nara. So what did I say? You take a stem and you add an ending. And depending on the ending, you get a declension. For example, a one man nominative is nara ha. So, naraha gachati. Man goes. Two men, narao. So, narao, do you say gachati or do you say narao gachataha? You can't say narao gachati because gachati is what? Single. You have to refer to dual third person. In other words, narao gachataha. Okay. Naraha, in other words, lots of men, men plural. How do you say lots of men go? Naraha gachanti. Can you say naraha gachati? No, why not? Because gachati refers to single. Gachanti is plural. Therefore, if there is a plural noun, it has to then follow a plural verb. Plural noun, plural verb. Dual noun, dual verb. Singular noun, singular verb. And accusative. What is accusative again? Motion towards, the one who is being accused, the one who is onto whom an action is being performed or done onto. So, naram, one man. Narao, two men. Naran, many men. So something is being done onto one man, something is being done onto two men, something is being done onto many men. So these are all stems which end in a. So every single stem in Sanskrit that ends with an a, there are of course exceptions which we will get to later, will end in these declensions. Aha, au, aha. Au, an. Okay? So this means you can now get any word, any noun, and you can just add this ending and you will have the same meaning. So for example, if you have horse, ashwa, that's the stem of a horse, ashwa, how would you say one horse? Ashwa, ha. How would you say two horses? Ashwa, ashwau. How would you say many horses? Ashwaha. All right, number 5, if your question is this, how do I write a sentence in Sanskrit? What is the general order which, if I knew, I could hardly go wrong? How do you write a sentence in Sanskrit? It goes like this. First the subject. What is subject? Nominative. Followed by the object. What's the object? Accusative. Followed by the verb. Subject, object, verb. In other words, nominative, accusative, verb. He goes to the city. Which one is the subject? He. City, object. Goes, verb. In English, it's he goes to the city. In Sanskrit, it is he, city, goes. English, you like mangoes. Sanskrit, you mangoes like. So this means this is the order which we will have to start getting used to, because if you say in Sanskrit subject, verb, object, it is incorrect. It is subject, object, verb. Repeat, subject, object, verb. Nominative, accusative, verb. Nominative, accusative, verb. So how do you say man goes to the horse? Man, naraha. Man is the nominative, so naraha goes. How many men go? One man. Therefore, naraha gachati. And going to what? The horse. And what do we say about the order? Subject, object, verb. So naraha ashwam gachati. How about two men go to the horse, to one horse? So the horse is still going to be ashwam, remember? Narao, now put the horse away. Narao gachataha. Why gachataha? Because gachataha is dual. So narao gachataha. Narao ashwam gachataha. Okay. How about the horse goes to the man? So now the horse becomes the subject. So ashwaha naram gachati. How do you say man goes to horses? Okay, what is horses? Horses has to be accusative. So ashwa, ashwan, horses. So how do you say one man goes to many horses? One man, naraha. Naraha gachati. Solved. Many horses, so naraha ashwan gachati. That's all. Naraha gachati still stays the same. Ashwan does not touch the man nor the verb. So the rule is the number associated to the accusative never modifies the verb nor the subject. That's number 7. If you have Rama the boy, or you could say man the hero, or horse the wise, then both the horse and the wise, or Rama the hero, they will both be in the same case. For example, horse goes to Rama the boy, then horse will be nominative, Rama the boy will be, both of them will be accusative. Why? Because the horse is going to Rama the boy. And also, this is very important. It says, while English relies on the order of the words to make sense, the beauty of Sanskrit is it relies on the word declension. In other words, the ending of the word will tell you what is actually the context of the sentence. And number 9, it says, when we translate from Sanskrit to English, because there is no words like the or a in Sanskrit, then you have to fill it in yourself. In other words, it has to make perfect sense in English using English proper grammar. Moving on, we have new vocabulary. Repeat after me. Ashwaha, horse. Ashwaha, horse. Ashwaha, horse. Gajaha, elephant. Gajaha, elephant. Naraha, man. Naraha, man. Putraha, son. Putraha, son. Mrgaha, deer. Mrgaha, deer. Ramaha, Rama. Ramaha, Rama. Wa, or. Nouns as well as verbs may be connected with cha and wa. So you know that already. You can say pustakam vatayanam cha. That means the book and the window. Or you could say pustakam vatayanam wa. The book or the window. When two nominatives are connected with va, that verb agrees with the nominative closest to it. Bottom point is also important. So gachati without anything is he goes. But when you add a subject to the verb, then the he is dropped. Let's do 4a. Naraha, nara means man. Naraha means many men. Mrgam means one deer. So, naraha, mrgam, smaranti. Now, why is this anti? Why does many remember? Because it's referring to the nominative. What's Ramaha? Ramaha just means Rama, a hero from the Ramayana. Ramaha, aha, instantly the ending tells you it is single nominative. Ashwao, ashwa, horse, ashwao, two horses. So Ramaha goes, gachati, so the T, remember, has to agree with the nominative. The verb has to agree with the nominative. So Rama goes to two horses. Narao, how many men is that? Narao. Two men. Wadataha, in other words, two men speak. See that taha? That's duo, agrees with ao. So two men speak to whom? Ramam. Ramam ends with a m, accusative. So two men speak to Rama. How do you say elephant is? Gajaha asti. Where is one elephant? Kutra gajaha asti. How about Rama speaks and the son remembers? How about just Rama speaks? Ramaha vadati. Son remembers. Putraha, not putram, because Rama is not doing anything to the son. It's just two components in one sentence. So Ramaha vadati, putraha cha smarati. How about Rama and the son go? Ramaha putraha cha, now go. You see how there's two? Now, are you going to say Ramaha putraha gachati? No, why not? Because there's two subjects involved. Therefore, Ramaha putraha gachataha. Why gachataha? Because gachataha means they two go. And that brings us to the end of our lesson 4, which, as you can see, is longer than the previous lessons. This is how this course works. There is more work as each lesson progresses. However, do not stress, because, as I said, when we do meet in class, we will go through this again, and you will feel quite relieved that we have gone through the main components previously. So there is something to cheer about. How to do the exercises? Very simple. Always break things down at the beginning. So yes, it's a long sentence here, but just go Ramaha. Okay, ignore everything else. Ramaha is what? Aha, nominative. So he's the main subject of the sentence. And then go straight to the verb. And instantly, in most cases, you will get the context of the sentence. So Rama goes. Whew, I'm now relieved. I know what this sentence is about. And then you just add the, now you look at the object, the accusative, and you go horse. You go two horses. Okay, so Rama goes to two horses. Excellent, I got that right. And this concludes our lesson 4 introductory session. Once again, thank you for your time. Go through the exercises. Remember the declensions for nominative and accusative. Remember the new vocabulary and go through the exercises. More details will be up on the website. For now, for those who already know the Devanagari, Dhanyavadaha Punarmilamaha. For the rest of us, let's now get into our continuation of the Devanagari letters. I am on page 42. Let's do the ones on the board. Starting with the labials. Pa, like a cup, line down, and then left to right. Again, pa. Just think of it as an open cup or open bowl, and then we come down. Remember, it doesn't touch the bottom line. It doesn't touch this line completely. And then left to right. And then its aspirated form is pa. Same thing, except in the center it creates a hook. And then roof. So it's the same thing as a pa. That's the pa so far, but then it continues and creates a hook there. So pa, and then hook at the end. All right, now ba, an ellipse with a line straight through, like an eye, and then roof last. Ba, an ellipse in the center, and then line. Okay, put some color there. I recommend colors, it's good for memory if you have coloring pencils or a digital device. And then ba, this is its aspirated form, is like a cobra big head. Okay, just think of a big head. And then stick, and then roof. Again, ba, a big head cobra, stop. Now stick down, and then roof last. Ma, so far, and then stick down, and then roof last. Okay? Ma, roof last. All right, semi-vowels, ya. So think of it as a sharp tail, and then roof last. Again, ya, so draw a sharp tail. So think of it like a lizard or something, right? With a sharp tail. Is ra, like electricity, and then roof last. Again, like electricity, roof last. La, a heart interrupted halfway, or looks like more like a 3 that's facing downwards, and then roof last. La, okay, so just think of this little 3 there. And then we have wa, ellipse, that's it. Similar to a ba, just doesn't have that line in the center. Okay, again, wa, and roof last. What are sibilants? They are the sha, sa, ha. Okay, let's do sha. And then line down, and then roof last. All right, again, sha. It's exactly like in the book. The book has its order 100% correct. And then retroflex, sh. And then we have, again, like a cup. And then you're going to have a center that line in the center, diagonal. So again, sh, retroflex, and then crossing over that line. Okay. S, lightning, just like that ra, and then you have a like a cup, a lightning and a cup, right? So lightning, which is actually a ra, and that cup, which is how we did a pa, if you remember. So again, sa, lightning or electricity, and a cup facing upwards, lying down, and then roof last. And then ha, 1/3 of the way down, and then a small hook to hang a, what do you call this? A snail, right? So it's got several parts, right? It's got a hook, and the snail is hanging onto the hook, and then roof last. So again, ha, anuswara. Anuswara just means it's a m on a letter. Right? We know that a is like this. To add an anuswara, you just put a dot above the stem. Okay, above the stem. Remember, wa is like this. Okay, that's wa. Now you got an anuswara. So if anuswara, we put a little pink there just to give us some indication, then that will go above. Okay. So rule, anuswara just means put a dot above the stem. Aha. So we got a visarga. Now how do we write this visarga? So now we're focusing on the visarga. How do we write this? So same, a will be like this. And that's an a. Now how do you put this visarga? You just put 2 dots at the end of the stem. How would you write this? Uhu. Okay, you write an u. Okay, done. Visarga. We'll just make this pink just for easier. That's it. Uhu. Alright, and that's all we need to know. Please practice. There will be more details on the website. The key is repetition. That's the only way to remember this. And we need to build our confidence so that we can recognize the letters from the Roman to Sanskrit and Sanskrit to Roman. So don't just do what I'm instructing, also go one step ahead. This is the mark of a good student who improvises his or her own exercises and thus comes very confident to class and has a very good time in this journey of ours. Please take care, and we will see each other when we see each other. Dhanyavadaha, Punarmilamaha.